All right, cool. So we have Mr. Kristen Johnson in the building today, man. Super excited to have you here. Another Aggie. I didn't work it out this way,
Hey,
but
we out here.
second person, I guess you guys breathe some excellence on that side. Second person to grace the stage, from A&T, originally from Ohio.
Hmm.
And we actually crossed paths working together at Microsoft in the mock program, which I'm pretty sure you'll get into and explain to everyone like what the mock aspired thing is. But yeah, introduce yourself. Anything you want to add that I missed, feel free to take the floor and let the people know.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm Christian. I have been doing design work for as long as I can remember, whether it been like, just drawing stuff on notepads to even like using computer aided design in high school and just kind of filtered up through there. My degree is in mechanical engineering, but I'm also a creative as well. I've been a photographer since I was 12. I think my first job was working for the Cincinnati Herald as a photojournalist. So yeah, so been in the creative side for a while. Graphic design stuff on the side, whether it been through like flyers or logos, anything of the sort there. So I've been all over the place. So any question you got about, the tech side of things or like pivoting, anything like that, I could probably answer.
No, that's dope. We're definitely gonna get into that because it's interesting to see you living in two worlds. But I want to add
Yeah.
also an avid snowboarder. So for those of
Yes.
you,
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
those,
Lord knows. What I was out there yesterday. It was like 10 degrees. I regret it, but
you
we was there.
no, that's dope. I feel like those personal touches of like who you are outside of work is like extremely important too, because like when you're feeling like burnout, like getting in the slopes or getting somewhere where you can decompress is super important. So,
For
um,
sure. Yeah.
okay, so if your first job, so I know you mentioned your first job being a journalist for the Herald. That's actually really interesting. Where did the interest for engineering and the technical side come about?
Yeah, so when I was a kid, I was constantly taking things apart just to like see how the insides worked. It got to the point where my mom would go to Goodwill and get VCR machines. I know for some people that might be a little far back,
Yeah.
but we, we got these machines, and she was just like, "Here, go ahead," and had a little screwdriver, took it apart, started messing with it, and just loved it ever since. So I think from that point, I kind of knew engineering was kind of my route, and mechanical in the sense that like I was doing it myself, like the mechanics of like taking the screws out or taking off the lid and things like that. So that's how it kind of came about, and then it just kept getting nurtured. I can't lie, my parents did great putting me in a whole bunch of engineering programs. I was I was one of them kids where if it was Saturday morning, you were not hearing from me. I was in some kind of school program or like enrichment program, and it really really helped out. So yeah, just kept looking into it and really thinking like, hey, I could probably make this a thing. I could probably make this a career. So
That's awesome to have that like early support from a parent putting you like in that exposure in those areas to like courses to really help you get a feel for like, okay, this is something I want to do forever. So high
yeah.
school, make the decision to lock in on A&T engineering.
Hmm.
Was it the same sentiment in college? Did you feel like, okay, I'm taking these classes and I'm still excited about, engineering, or was it a little different than what you expected?
It was a little different, and the reason I say that was because in high school, I think my junior year, I had taken my first class in Photoshop and Illustrator. And at that point, I was like, oh, like, okay, this is how people are, creating all these crazy images or, making logos for companies and things like that. I want to work for Nike. That would be kind of cool. Nike has all these graphics and things like that. Maybe I could do that.
Yeah.
And it got to the point where I was like, okay, well, maybe I could do this as like a side hustle type deal. Um, as a kid, and still have mechanical engineering be the forefront, which is what it ended up being. And when I got to college, it was like, I was still working the mechanical engineering route, but whatever club I was in, I was probably the one doing the flyers or taking the photos and putting all that together. So it was almost like I was building our portfolio way back then
Mhm.
to help out with whatever I wanted to do in the future. So yeah, living in both worlds has been interesting to say the least.
Yeah. No, that's awesome perspective because like honestly, some certain people say like follow your passion and things like that, but you're kind of in a unique spot where you are following like the two passions that you have like in parallel.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
okay, so you're in college, you knock that out, getting the engineering degree. It's time to graduate. Let's talk about landing the role at Microsoft. So to give some context, the name of the role has changed quite a few times. We were originally hired as PFEs, Premier Field Engineers, but now it's called like Customer Success or Cloud Solution Architect. But did you have any clue like what you were getting yourself into when you saw that title?
None, no idea. So I think it's still up on the website. There was a profile that I did for A&T about like graduating and like what I was going to do afterward. And I think I said something about like building Microsoft products, and that is not what we do. That is nowhere near what I was doing.
Yeah.
Um so no, I had no idea what we were doing out of
No, no,
college.
no, that's actually a good statement. I like that you reworded that because that's like the next piece of the puzzle is although we had the same title, we were doing two completely different things. And so
Hmm.
this context helps for those who are interested in like customer success engineer. Like we were at the same company, but two completely different day in the lives as far as what we did. So okay, you had no clue what you were signing up for. Talk
No.
about what the day-to-day looked like as, a customer success engineer. Once we got out of training, I guess more so. Well, no, you could share
Right.
the training phase and then afterwards.
So yeah, the training phase was what, like 6, 8 months?
Yeah, 6 to 8 months.
And it was long. It was long. They made sure that we were ready, which I do appreciate. There were a lot of classes together on specifically Azure. And then I believe maybe 2 weeks in, we got what were known as our domains. So this is where we would kind of like split off into what we would primarily focus on. So I was doing mobile device management, which was fine for me because I'm a mechanical engineer. I dealt with devices all across the board. I know some people might understand when I say that I am my family's tech support. So me and devices are like, one and the same. So um, with that, I wasn't necessarily building a solution for our customers. The solution was already built. I essentially had to help our customers be able to use that solution. So a day in the life for me was you would get on the computer, you would look through essentially a repository or a database of available customers who are looking for your specific skill set. So, looking for people who had MDM experience or MAM, mobile application management experience. And you would talk to the dispatcher. You say, hey, I think I'd like to go on this um, essentially on this trip because most of them at the time were on site.
Yep.
And, if everything sounds good after a scoping call with your customer, just to get a feel for exactly what they needed, um, you'd say, hey, this is going to be like a 3-day engagement or this could be a 5-day engagement. And then essentially, dispatcher looks at everything, says everything's good, dispatches you out, you go to the customer site. Um, you're interacting with them, making sure that you're essentially teaching them what to do. So you might have PowerPoint slides, you may have like your own mini environment set up
Yeah.
just to show them the steps that you take, maybe any shortcuts that Microsoft doesn't necessarily put out, but some things that you've recognized. Um, so that's it from like the dispatching perspective, which is like 95% of what's going to happen. But the other 5% is the certifications. So getting certified in whatever technology that you're looking at or working on. So most likely, I think the Azure fundamentals you have to have. There's also stuff for mobile device management. There's stuff for DevOps. There's stuff for AI engineers. So those certifications, on top of the fact that because the cloud and things are rapidly changing, you also have to know what changed before your dispatch. So some options may not be there anymore, and you may not know that.
Yeah.
Happened to me a few times, and you might get caught out unawares. But that's also a good thing to do, is probably research before getting out there.
Wow, yeah, you just dropped a lot of value, and I honestly have a lot
No,
of
it was a lot.
from this. So I think the first question I'll start off to follow up with that, because this is like a really good accurate representation of the day in the life. The first question I'll follow up with is, okay, you stepped into this role not really knowing anything from college. You said that there was a push for, certifications within Microsoft. So for someone who's watching this, and they're like, okay, I want to break into tech, I don't know where to start. Would you say getting some of these fundamental, certifications would be a good stepping stone to first applying to these technical positions? Like, if you had to go back in time, knowing what you know now, maybe not at the age of like 18 going into college, but maybe you're like 30 and you're trying to think like, should I go get a degree or should I go get certifications? Like, which one do you think is more prevalent right now in the industry?
In the industry, I say both, and I'll say for like the younger audience, for the younger audience, I would definitely say start with certifications. Like you already going through a degree, you're already going through so much in that 4-year time span that adding something on to that might be a lot. If you feel passionate about it, get a minor.
Yeah.
But for the most part, I would say for the certifications, definitely do those, especially the fundamental certifications. So it shows like you're actively trying to learn.
Yeah.
I know that Microsoft has like their own website called Microsoft Learn or Microsoft Docs or Microsoft Learn, one of the two. Either way, they're linked. But essentially, you can go on there and get training for free through Microsoft. The certification part, you do have to pay, but just actively trying to learn already goes a long way. I think Microsoft has that, and Amazon and AWS have it as well.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, honestly, don't get me wrong, that exposure from college laid a good foundation and showed like consistency and dedication to something. But a lot of the things that we learned through that program was once I started. So, I mean, we were generous enough to have that like 6-month to 8-month window. I think industry hires, it was a little bit shorter, like maybe a 1 to 3 month ramp up period to really get their footing on things. But yeah, your company, for those who are watching it, they're not going to expect you to know everything. But like Christian said, like you going to get a certification and showing that you're a self-learner goes a long way in a company, because no one's going to hold your hand and say, hey, you need to go learn this. It's like you have to have that awareness to say like, hey, I have this gap in my skills. How can I fulfill it on my own? And so, yeah, okay, that's a dope day in the life. So you're doing this for a few years, and the opportunity comes for you to pivot into a new role still at Microsoft. Can you talk about that process and how that came about?
Yeah. So at the time, I was, still doing the customer success role,
Mhm.
and I was thinking to myself, I'm like, hey, you know, I'd like to use my degree. Customer success is nice. Do not get me wrong. I still love it to this day. I got to travel. I got to eat on a company dime. I got perks that were absolutely crazy.
Yeah.
Beautiful, beautiful things. But I think I want to start using my degree, my mechanical engineering degree. And a recruiter had reached out to me through Microsoft and was like, "Hey, your name came up for essentially me putting a resume just on Microsoft's career page."
Oh wow.
So it wasn't even me reaching out.
So it had nothing to do
So
with you being internal either. It was just a career page.
no, I think my recruiter actually didn't know I was internal.
That's pretty cool.
And yeah, I had to tell him, I was like, "Yeah, here's my ID number." He's like, "Oh, you're internal." I was like,
Oh,
"Yeah, yeah." He's like, "Oh, this is gonna make this a lot easier." I was like, "Hey, don't, you know,
I'm all
appreciate it."
yeah, that's awesome.
Right. So, yeah, that opportunity came about, and the interview process was actually kind of easy. I say easy in the sense that it wasn't long. I know that a lot of like trying to break into tech and trying to get into tech is the long interview that's like spans over so many weeks, sometimes months.
Once, yeah.
Yeah. So in that sense, I was like, okay, I guess I took it as, hey, they really want me, you know. So went through the process, got the job, and made the move. I think at the time I was living in Dallas, Texas, and moved out to Seattle, Washington, and everything that came with it. So, absolutely, absolutely loved the role. I became a design for excellence engineer, which was essentially me being able to work on, actually being able to work on all of Microsoft's hardware products,
Ooh.
which was really cool. Yeah,
Okay. So let's unpack this a bit. So as
sure.
customer success, you had to be technical, but it was more so from a standpoint of I'm going to help this company, implement these things or utilize these things or understand how to work these tools that Microsoft builds, right?
Mhm. Yeah,
So technical, but not really like hands-on to a certain extent because you're just kind of telling someone else, educating someone else on how to do their job.
mhm.
But your second role as a DFX engineer or design for excellence engineer, now this was your opportunity to really be hands-on and be the person actually designing and building out these technologies that Microsoft is then going to package off to a customer.
Right. Yeah, and so in I guess some of the differences between the two roles was I was doing a lot more talking in the customer success role. Like I
Yeah.
remember even like the interview, most of the interview was just like being able to speak to a presentation and being
Yeah.
able to speak to an audience. And that just completely shifted. And now as a DFX engineer, I'm more so like, okay, what do the numbers say? Is there an interference in this drawing that I'm seeing? Um, can we shift something around so that um, copper isn't exposed on this circuit board and things like that. So it was more technical in the sense of, you're right. It was more technical in the sense of being more hands-on rather than just having the knowledge straight from my head to give to somebody.
Yeah. And so more technical was one piece, but then you also talked about relocating from Dallas to Seattle or Redmond. And that was
Mhm.
because that role required you to go on site to the Microsoft office.
Yeah, it did. I moved in 2020, so
Oof.
at the time wasn't going into the office, but
Yeah.
when everything was lifted, we were more of like the hybrid work model, so 3 days a weekend, 2 days out, or 2 days remote. but even that could be flexed in a sense. So, that was something you work out with your manager saying, hey, I have, such and such happening at this time. Can I go home and work from home from this time to this time?
Right. It's like some flexibility if like you're getting your cable installed because you just moved out there or something like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, because that's an important gem. I tell people, you could say you want to work at a company, but sometimes you need to know what locations and what their, work from home or work on site policies are. Because if you want to work at Microsoft, there are certain roles that might require you to relocate to, Washington State. And if you're not ready to do that, then you might have to pivot on, the company you want to work for or the role you want to work at. So that's important advice for sure. So you're getting more technical in the DFX world. COVID at this point has us and lingering. And so what was like the next step in that journey? Like what's next kind of in that timeline for you?
So just going through the DFX process and essentially learning about the manufacturing process of printed circuit boards. That was my main thing. There's printed circuit boards for all of these different products. And, some of them I'm happy to say most of them are actually out on the market.
Okay.
And so what was it? The Surface Duo 2, like the flip phone.
Mm-hmm.
Was one of mine. The Surface Hub, and I believe one controller, Xbox controller. I can't remember which one though.
Okay.
So when I say all of Microsoft's products, including Xbox, people forget Xbox all the time. But just learning from industry professionals, because again, you don't have to know everything. Somebody's gonna know something that you know. And that's something that is hard to accept also, like especially for like young people coming up and trying to be like that next big thing. Might be like me, might have a little bit of an ego, okay? Might have, a little bit of imposter syndrome, like, I'm supposed to know this, why do you know this and I don't? That's just something that you end up breaking because you're gonna realize that you don't know everything. And it's fine that you don't know everything. You're not supposed to. And you're supposed to be able to like lean on other people, and that's how you build a team. That's how you build this camaraderie within your team.
Yeah, it is. It's pretty intimidating when like you first want to ask questions and get help, and you're like, I don't want to seem like I don't know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But I think it's like you said, it's important to be at a company or at least in a team that has that culture of everyone being willing to help each other, especially being young. Like a lot of people view that as a bad thing that you're young and maybe a little more inexperienced, but there's so many older who are willing to like pass that knowledge off to the next generation for us to kind of carry the torch forward. So
exactly, especially the ones trying to retire. They're the ones who are like, look, here you go. You're the subject matter expert now. I'm going to go, to the Poconos and you'll be fine. So,
yeah. So I'm assuming that jump one came with relocation help. They paid for you to relocate from Dallas to Seattle, which is a big for people who don't know. Like you're not just expected at a company to pick up and uproot at your own dime. Two, I'm assuming an increased pay. I doubt you went out there just to make the same thing you were making in Dallas at that role, but you could give clarity or context on that.
Yeah, so you're right in both aspects. It was a relocation package was in there, and increased pay, which I was very, very happy about. But with the increased pay, you got to also think about where you're living as well. So, because there are different bands for different locations.
Right.
So I think Dallas was like one of the lowest bands, and then of course Redmond was one of the highest.
The highest.
So yeah. you got to think of like cost of living and things like that. Those all, go into essentially your base salary. You can negotiate for more stock. I sometimes say that's a great idea, um, because some of these companies, especially tech companies, they are on the rise. And if you're trying to build that little nest egg, and, put some money away easily, that's a good way to do it. Um, but yeah, in terms of like the money aspect of it, yeah, no, that pay increase was beautiful. I can't lie, it was beautiful.
Yeah. I like that you mentioned the stock piece too, because that's really like the long-term game of it as well. Like there's a lot of people who work from Microsoft, 15, 20 years who are millionaires now just because of the stock
Yeah.
increase at that time. So it's important to play the long-term game while focus on the base pay too.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm. If you can sacrifice a few things, you'll be okay. You ain't got to sacrifice like coffee or anything like that, but like maybe one less DoorDash meal.
yeah,
One less.
yeah. Maybe instead of the 3-bedroom home, or the 3-bedroom apartment, you just go 2-bedroom. Like you got to cut corners where you see fit, and
Yeah.
stack. I mean, that's another benefit as well to throw out there, like the ESPP program at Microsoft, like the ability to just buy discounted stock right out of your paycheck. You don't even have to like think about it.
Man.
Pretty awesome too. Okay, so we're at Microsoft doing our thing as in the engineering space, actually being hands-on, being technical. And so how do we fast forward to where we are now, in our present day and time, this new chapter in life? Kind of summarize that and bring me up to speed so we can get into the UX UI kind of combo.
Sure, I can go there. So during my time as a VFX engineer, we had what were known as initiatives,
Mhm.
right? So these were essentially projects that were internal to help the organization as a whole.
Okay.
And what we had realized was training and onboarding was very difficult
Hmm.
for not only me, but like other new people coming in. It was just a cumbersome process. You got a OneNote and maybe some tutorials, and that was it. So, and then, also thinking about where we wanted to store information for anybody else who was coming on. So, who's new, who needs some guidance, anything like that. That didn't exist. So, I got the initiative to essentially create some kind of tool for training and onboarding.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
And yeah, and so in doing that, it ended up becoming a UX UI project in me doing it. So I was doing user studies, I was doing A and B tests, I was doing wireframing, prototyping, all of that in order to create this tool that eventually launched a few years ago. And from what I know, they're still using it, and organizations are trying to take it and build on it for like others. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, so I was like, okay, y'all got it. It's y'all property at the end of the day. But
Yeah.
um ended up ended up doing that and was like, I actually kind of like this. I
Yeah.
actually like doing this digital design stuff. And when I was there, I started talking internally to other UX designers and just trying to see like what their process was. I was telling them about things that I was thinking about, which was a certification,
Mhm.
and thinking if that was a good idea. What should I do for my portfolio? Just asking a whole bunch of questions,
Yeah.
and they were great resources for me, and helped me out a bunch. And I ended up going the certification route. I did the Google UX Professional certification through Coursera.
Dropping gems, take notes.
Yeah, so I did that one, and the cool thing about Coursera that I absolutely love, I didn't know that they did this, but when you finish the course or when you finish the certification, they stop the subscription to Coursera like automatically so they don't keep charging you.
That's pretty thoughtful of them. Like, hey,
Look, I got the email. I was like, oh, praise Jesus, because I forgot. So
yeah,
ended up going through that route and absolutely loved it. While going through the certification, you essentially are building your own project in your own like your first portfolio. They're giving you PDF files or like Google Slides to essentially drop your designs into wherever they need to go on said slide, and all of that. And you can put that up on your own online portfolio whenever you see fit.
that's pretty awesome.
So
You dropped a lot of technical terms in there, so I want to like break
sure.
them down because I know sometimes if I'm watching something and I hear a lot of words that I don't know, I immediately get overwhelmed. But if we make like simple comparisons, it makes it a lot easier. So you
Sure.
kind of put a pin there. You said when you started creating this tool for internal use for like training and onboarding, you were doing like wireframes. Can you just like explain really quickly like what a wireframe even is?
Yeah, so wireframe is like a quick sketch.
Okay.
It's just like you can do it on paper or you can do it digitally. Most designers will tell you to start in paper just because you can get the thought process out faster.
Right. Instead of
Um,
worrying about all the bells and whistles like visually, like on the computer.
exactly. So like for instance, on a wireframe, it's not going to be anything graphical. It's going to be a white screen or piece of paper, and everything's going to be in like shades of black.
Okay.
That's it. So, like, even if you're supposed to put an image somewhere, or like you say you want to put an image somewhere, so
Mhm.
you just have I just have like a gray box that I'd probably put an X over and then say image. That's it.
Yeah. So it's more so like
Um,
a sketch for someone to visually get a feel of like this is what the website or the interface that they call is going to look like. So we'll have a home button here. You'll draw like a little square, or however the button is going to be represented. Like you said,
mhm.
image here with a box. Maybe a scroll bar on the side. Just really like the bare bones and like layout of like a web page before someone actually goes and develops it.
Right, exactly.
Okay, so that's wireframing, and
Mhm.
I know you said there were some tools that you could use. Like, just what are some free? They don't even have to be free. What are some tools that you could use to create wireframes? So that way, if someone is watching this and they want to, maybe look into learning those tools specifically, if you could drop a few off the top of your head.
For sure. So I'm gonna start off pen and paper. Always start off with pen and paper. But digitally, Figma. Figma seems to be the industry standard as of right now. I say as of right now because, of course, this is tech. Everything moves so fast. I don't know what else is coming.
Right.
So I would say Figma. There's also another application called Sketch, which
Okay.
is literally for just sketching things. So it's really good for wireframes. Um, and I believe it's still alive now. So Adobe XD is another one. Adobe XD is a little weird though because with it being in the Adobe family, you are going to have to pay.
Yeah.
So that's going to be like the 7 day trial if you can get that and use that. Sure, I gave the caveat of I don't know if it's alive because of the fact that Adobe and Figma were actually supposed to merge,
Okay.
and something had happened and the merger broke down.
Oh.
So
So Figma sounds like it's really killing two birds with one stone, possibly. Like,
exactly. So if I had to like really just nail it down, I'd say Figma and Sketch are your ways to go.
yeah, like those will, having those top two in your skills section will obviously get you some traction when you go to apply. I think I've gotten like wireframes on something called like Balsamic before, but
Oh yeah, yeah.
like going right over to YouTube, you can really like, get comfortable with using those. And so we would just start off building a website that already exists. That way you're not thinking about like the creativity of it, but it's just like getting more familiar with how to find certain buttons and set certain things up. And then after you understand the tool, you can unlock the creativity. But okay, the next one you mentioned was A and B testing. So could you shed a little light on like what an A and B test is and like what the process or point of it is?
So an A and B test, the way that I understand it, is essentially you have because there's so many different definitions,
Right?
but the way I understand it is you have essentially two products, and you're putting them in front of your end user, customer, whoever, and you're seeing which one they like more. So this could be for features, it could be for like, hey, how does this button design look? Or how do these two button designs look? Um, Actually, on Design, I guess I gotta call it X, Design X, formerly Twitter. A lot of people will essentially gauge the audience and say, which interface or which button set looks better. That's A and B testing,
Okay.
and you can pretty much get a good gauge of what people like from there and move forward.
So it's pretty much like instead of having like just going with your gut feel, which might be subjective or opinionated to, your eye, you put out two products and get a feel for feedback and surveys. And based on the response you get, that's what you move forward with to implement out to like the larger audience.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Just want to make sure everybody didn't get like lost in the weeds there because we
For
kind of
sure.
a little deep tech for a second, but it's all good. Like when you're in that world, you're used to speaking that language. It just makes sense. So
I'm messing up.
no, it's all good. It's all good, man. Oh, I had to throw my life raft. So another perspective I like to, talk about is what other roles, do you interact with as a UX UI designer? Like walk through that day in the life as we kind of wrap this up.
Yeah. So I interact with a lot of people, and even just as a UX UI designer, there's still so much collaboration that happens, right?
Mhm.
So as a designer, I have to talk with our UX researchers who are pretty much the ones who have done, research studies, user studies on um, whatever product that we're trying to put out. Maybe they've done a competitive analysis if our product is going to be something similar to something that's already on the market.
Oh, wow.
So interact a lot with them. Our project and product managers, of course, to keep us on schedule. And if I do need more resources than I currently have, making sure that they know that as well. And, trying to give them a good timeline of what I'm doing so it can inform their own scheduling decisions. And as a designer, I also interface with our users. So we have some you know, essentially beta testers and usability testers, to where we'll put out something and we'll say, hey, this is maybe in pre-alpha or like the very, very beginning stages. It's still very, very broken in a lot of ways. It's very basic.
Yeah.
But we want you to use this and try to go through this specific process and then tell us how it felt. Um, are there any ways that we could possibly improve this? Do you not like, having to drop down here or anything of the sort? And so from that collaboration, a lot of ideas get generated in terms of designs and redesigns.
Okay. So basically, based on that feedback, you're like, okay, tweak this, implement this, keep this, finalize it.
Exactly, because the one thing with being a UX UI designer, you have to be user focused. You have to be user centric,
Yeah.
because at the end of the day, it's, while you do have a customer being the company or whoever you're working for or with, the end user is who is going to be using it.
Right.
So you want to think about that end user in every step of that design process.
Okay, so that's like a lot of the like collecting, setting things up. We call it like requirements gathering, if you will,
Sure.
side of it. So after you're done that, you now pass these, Figma files or these diagrams off to the dev team for them to actually go and code it and build it and make sure it works. So if someone wasn't technical at
Mm-hmm.
all, they could create these, wireframes or designs, visual designs, if you will, and
Mm-hmm.
pass them off. But you have a slight edge being technical, or you feel like that doesn't matter at all?
I don't really think it matters. And I say that because, again, collaboration is very much key in this industry. So yeah, I'll create designs and then send them off to our devs. But with those, I'll also create what's known as a user story.
Okay.
So a user story is essentially just a way for me to explain to the dev what this is, what this product is, and how it's supposed to function and what the user is supposed to do.
Okay.
So, say I have like an application for ordering pizza or something, and I'll say, hey, these are the designs. The user is supposed to go from screen one to screen two, be able to tap on any of the icons on screen two, tap continue, go to screen three, so on and so forth until they're done and we go back to the home screen. And
Okay.
so that also helps devs kind of understand what to do.
That makes sense. It's like you're telling them also in written format, follow these screens to accomplish this goal. So that way, that's like the handoff phase of it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. No, that's dope. So it doesn't require you to be technical. You don't have to know how to code. You have to be highly collaborative, I guess, a level of empathy.
Mm-hmm.
And then also the ability to like really translate your thoughts, into like written, be able to communicate verbally and written is like
Exactly. Yeah.
skills. Okay, cool. So I know we've been kind of talking for a while. To wrap this up, really the last 60 seconds is what we call like the millionaire minute. And what it is you giving any advice to someone watching this. Really, your story is going to resonate with two audiences. One, people who are interested in breaking into tech, your transition from your first roles into UX UI really required that ability to get out there and learn a lot of things on your own. So they have no technical experience. They're trying to break into an entry level role. But then there's also going to be people who are watching this like yourself, who are like, hey, I'm in a technical role or I'm in a role in tech, but I'm looking to pivot to something else. Just spend the last 60 seconds giving any advice that we might not have already covered to someone watching this video.
For sure. I think my biggest advice is just to start. A lot of people are scared when trying to do, I guess, something big when it comes to getting into a role, breaking into tech or, breaking out of what to do something completely different. And I know firsthand it's terrifying, trust me. But the sooner you start, the sooner you understand that it's doable. And from that start, you're like, okay, what do I need to know? Well, I need to know how to, write personas, or essentially how to write character, how to write characters for your applications, or you need to know how to, go from one size screen to a different size screen. There are so many resources out there for you. I am a big proponent of YouTube University. Uh, there are so many different what are known as design systems. So designers in big companies all work off of the same system. So everything looks the same, right? All of those are in several different repositories or several different websites. And you can just go through them and look at how Google is doing theirs, how Shopify is doing theirs, how big they make their icons and why they make them so big. I believe Google's is called Material.io and Shopify's is called Polaris.
Oh wow, I'm gonna have to put that in the description for the people at home.
Yeah, and you can just go and you can look at those and you'd be like, okay, this makes sense. They'll also talk about, fonts and typography, how big to make fonts for certain screens and things like that. So you can really just learn the basics on your own. I do still recommend, getting a certification or going back to school if that's your prerogative.
Yeah.
But the biggest thing you got to do is just start.
Man, that's solid advice, because it's easy to go down the rabbit hole of like watching these videos, listening to everyone else's story, but then like that doubt kicks in, like, okay, he can do it because of X, Y, and Z. I can't do it. And that's not true at all. Like, we have access to the internet and you can learn anything by just really Google searching and finding the right resources. So that's definitely some solid advice for them. Yeah, man, I appreciate you coming on here and just being willing to, give out some free game, really in a lot of different roles, all into one. And I'm excited to see, where you take things in the future.